if we're being honest about it, like, this is probably the coolest, most hype maybe Nintendo has ever given. And they weren't really at the Game Awards, but they still did some cool stuff around the Game Awards, which I want to make sure you actually saw and know about. So good morning, Mario, and good morning, Switch fans. Hope you're all doing fantastic out there today. Gather around for some Nintendo goodies. The Game Awards did not see Nintendo capture the top prize. Mario wonders why it didn't get Game of the Year. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom tried to craft a different answer, but alas, Baldur's Gate 3 won. Nintendo did win Best Sim Strategy with Pikmin 4, they won Best Action Adventure with Legend of Zelda, and they won Best Family Game with Mario Wonder. Everything else was basically about Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate 3 is not on Nintendo Switch, and it took home a crap ton of awards, although I was glad to see Alan Wake 2 did get some love. That was my pick, probably. Although I do love Mario Wonder a ton, Alan Wake 2 blew me away with, like, it's just crazy. It's crazy. If you have a chance to experience that, I know it's not on Switch, but if you have a chance, really do yourself a favor. Anyhow, Nintendo's big announcement at the Game Awards was nothing. But they did make a substantial update to Nintendo Switch Online by dropping 3 titles shadow dropped onto the N64 app. This brings them completely current with everything announced for N64, and now there's only one Holy Grail game left that has been announced and not released on NSO, which is Golden Sun. Where art thou, Golden Sun? Isaac Clarke. Is that his name? Isaac Clarke? Or is it just Isaac? Who's Isaac Clarke? I think that's a different Isaac, but Isaac is in Golden Sun, and I'm waiting for him. You won't have to wait, though, for Jet Force Gemini, Harvest Moon 64, and 1080 Snowboarding, which are all now officially out. Nintendo posted it on their official Twitter during the show, although it didn't make an appearance, like, in the show. Their presence within the Game Awards was maybe the lightest it's ever been, but I have some theories and ideas on how that's actually possibly the greatest thing. I know it sounds crazy, but let me let it percolate a little more, and I'll give you my 2 cents. Right now, though, the only real thing that I saw of, like, substance coming to Switch is this new Tales of Kenzera Zao game. It's a Metroidvania about overcoming grief, which sounds really, like, artsy-fartsy, and maybe, like, the gameplay would be lacking, but alas, it is an EA original title. The developer is Surgent Studios, never heard of them, but I do love the look of this. It looks like a really good combat-oriented 2.5D Metroidvania-type title. And as we wait for Prime 4, as we love Dread, this seems like it could be a really good game. It's dropping April 23rd in 2024, and now we have 2 early year Metroid clone-ish type titles in Prince of Persia in January, and now Tales of Kenzera in April that are both coming to Switch, and both look like standouts for the early year in terms of Switch downloadable titles. Both these hit in the eShop, and both these, like, frankly looking really great. I'm excited to play both of them. Might have more on Prince of Persia soon. There is a demo also announced for Prince of Persia coming on January 11th, so those were kind of like the 2 Switch-related things, but for the most part, it was those N64 titles that they decided to drop during the show, which I thought was cool. I thought that was nice of Nintendo to, like, involve their fans in some way, because for the most part, this show, it's not really for Nintendo people. I mean, there's some Nintendo awards, but, like, most of the games announced are years in the future, and most of them aren't coming to Switch. They might come to Switch too, but that's a whole nother story. And yeah, we're going to convert over to the maybe segment of the video. And the maybe is not about Switch 2. I bet some of you thought this was going to be about hardware and about, oh, maybe they'll release a new console, but it's actually not. It actually does spawn from the Game Awards because Eiji Aonuma was there to accept the award for The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, winning Best Action Adventure Game. And because he was going to be in attendance at the Game Awards, he did do some interviews and sort of made the circuit with some of the bigger publications. And he was asked some interesting questions about the future of Zelda and the future of Tears of the Kingdom, which we know is complete. But there's one that stands out above the rest, and it's like the coolest maybe. What's the most wanted thing that we wanted before Tears of the Kingdom that we didn't get in Tears of the Kingdom? Raise your hand if you know the answer. Probably a lot of valid answers, but to me the biggest one is co-op or a playable Zelda. I think given the storyline and how they introduced the trailers for Tears of the Kingdom, there was a possibility and even maybe a probability that we would get to play Zelda in some sort of alternate timeline or alternate past or future. That did not pan out, as Tears of the Kingdom is a Link-centric adventure. But IGN asked Aonuma about a playable Zelda in the future, and his response to me is fascinating. There was a long-winded reply he gave, and then he interrupted his translator and gave a different answer. So I'm going to give you both of them and we'll kind of go through it. So his long-form answer that his translator was attempting to give to IGN was, yeah, it is interesting when you think about the name of the series, The Legend of Zelda, but Link is always the main character. And Link has been the main character, and Zelda has always been involved, and they have a relationship and their own rules in each of the games. But it is true that I think there's always room for thinking about this type of thing in Zelda's role, and there may be some sort of possibility for something like that in the future. That's the long-winded explanation, basically saying like, yeah, it's weird that Zelda's the name, but Link's the main character, maybe, in the future, possibly. But as Aonuma's translator was relaying the response to IGN, Aonuma interjected in English saying, maybe, maybe, maybe. Now this to me feels very suspicious, okay? Because his response is like pretty expected, right? It's a pretty like, oh yeah, it's surprising Zelda is the main character. Like we've heard that a million times. It's sort of like a running joke, right, with this franchise. But when he interjects and says maybe, maybe, maybe in English, to me that adds more weight to his response. To me that adds like, there's something he's a little bit nervous about here. There's something that he's a little bit wanting to clarify. And I guess you could read two ways into this. You could read it like he didn't want them to misinterpret what he was saying, but he was very careful in his long-winded explanation, right? The long story says, and there may be some sort of possibility for something like that in the future. But then he interjects maybe, 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 which to me seems more of a hint rather than a cover-up. I think that they are definitely considering this, considering how strong the fan base is for the current iteration of The Legend of Zelda, considering how much love there is for the Zelda character as herself, and considering that we are getting a big movie where there's inevitably going to be a lot of character building for both Link and Zelda. Now, you might think that the movie doesn't really tie into this at all, but I do think it does. The Mario movie has clearly elicited a desire from Nintendo to fulfill the fandom for different characters. We do have a Princess Peach game coming out. Donkey Kong will be back at some point soon, and he's getting a theme park expansion in spring of next year. I think the Zelda movie is the perfect vehicle to introduce more of Zelda to the wider audience and then drop a game that features her as the main character. Now, he's talking about playable, and maybe that is still the way that it goes, but I do wonder, we do have some spin-offs, right? Like we had the Four Swords games, we have the Triforce Heroes game that was back on the 3DS, although I didn't like rock anybody's world. There are the Hyrule Warriors games, but in comparison to like Mario, Zelda does not get anywhere near the spin-offs and anywhere near the differentiation. Like Mario has the sports games, the RPG games, Mario has the party games, Peach now has her own entry, Luigi has his own entry, Donkey Kong spawned into his old franchise. I think that Zelda is ripe for this. I think there are characters and genres and mechanics that are there for the pickings, but Nintendo has not really gone full bore yet. And like they did experiment, with some of the handheld games on the DS, Spirit Tracks, that was a fun one, Phantom Hourglass, a fun one that did have different mechanics, but they still basically all fall within 2D Zelda, 3D Zelda, and then, okay, there's Hyrule Warriors, Cadence, and Triforce, and Four Swords, but it feels like this franchise could explode onto the scene in a much larger way. I could see a Playable Zelda spin-off game actually taking shape after the movie drops. I don't think Playable Zelda in the title role is something we'll see in the next Legend of Zelda game, as assumedly that's already in the works. But I do think that Playable Zelda, either as a side character in the next game, and then as her own character in a spin-off, would allow them to expand the franchise and capitalize on the mass market expansion it is going to receive when that movie does come out. It's like inevitable. Obviously, Zelda's very popular, duh. It's like one of the best and one of the biggest sellers on Nintendo Switch, but it gains a new level of exposure when a movie does drop in cinemas around the world. It happened with Mario, it happened with Luigi and Peach and all those characters. It's going to happen with Link and Zelda. And it will not only benefit the main Zelda game, but I think it does open the door for more spin-offs and an expansion of the franchise, which, given the success, I think that's something Furukawa would want. I feel like he's more business savvy and does want to sort of push these properties in the same way that Disney has pushed Star Wars and Marvel. Maybe not to the same extent, hopefully, honestly, not to the same extent, but I could see the movie being sort of a turning point for this franchise where it does get many more entries, more frequent entries maybe not yearly per se, but it could sort of move towards Mario, which seemingly gets multiple games every single year. I think this is one of the most interesting maybes we've ever had delivered from Nintendo because it comes from the creator themselves. It's not like Doug Bowser saying, oh, we might do that, we love the fans. It's like, no, the creator's saying like, maybe. And it's interesting because it's maybe, period, maybe, comma, maybe, which to me says he's really thinking about it. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Tell me how you feel about this new Metroidvania coming to Switch, and have you played any of the new N64 games that hit the eShop during the Game Awards? That does it for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, everybody, stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, stay positive out there. Love you lots. SwitchForce out.